Hello, Academy. It's great to be with you again. I am excited to dive into today's lesson, which is something that's very, very near and dear to my heart because it involves training your brain to really be a best friend and not a foe, training your brain to be your best business partner and not some dangerous neighborhood to hang out in. And it's near and dear to my heart because for so many years, my brain would tell me thoughts that did not serve me, thoughts about how I wasn't good enough, how I would never make it, how I was bad at things, how people would probably think about me. I mean, the list just went on and on and on. And what I know is that if we are going to make it in our businesses, we have got to train our brains to work with us and not against us. And so what we're going to cover today in terms of the psychology of high performers is we're going to talk about the science and technology of actually training our brains to create affirmations and manifesting that which we want in a way that actually works. I'm going to dive into some of the science that shows us there's actually a right and a wrong way to do these affirmations, and right and wrong meaning how they function. So there's actually a way that we can use positive affirmations and manifesting techniques, and it's really going to work for us. And there's another way to use them where it actually, science has shown, will increase shame and doubt and self-judgment. So let me just tell you as we begin that I've not always been this courageous person that is great at manifesting abundance in my life because I never really understood how to appropriately use the technology. So as an example, it wasn't too long ago that I had an insane fear of speaking. And that might seem just crazy to you because I now am a paid keynote speaker. I speak for a living. It's my happy place up on that stage. But most human beings fear speaking in public more than death. So I get it. I've been there. I've been there, done that. I learned how to use the cognitive skills that I'm going to teach you in this lesson as a psychologist and applied them to my own self, and I dove into personal development and really changed my brain. And the coolest thing ever is we have the ability to literally change the way our brains work, function, think. So back in graduate school, which that's probably 20 years ago now. Yeah, 20 years ago in graduate school, the number one goal that my graduate advisor had for me was to get me to speak. I mean, can you even imagine? I literally wouldn't speak in class. I wouldn't raise my hand. I wouldn't provide my opinions in research group because I was so terrified. I was such a perfectionist. I was so terrified of what people would think. I was so terrified of messing it up, of showing people I didn't know everything, and I was really stifled by that thought process, as you can imagine. One day in my internship, I actually fainted. I fainted with my advisor. It was so embarrassing. So how did I go from that to being a keynote speaker where I actually love to speak now? So I want you to realize that whatever fears you have right now in your business, in your life, about yourself, about your ability to create the lifestyle you want, about money, whatever fears you have, you can punch them in the face. You can train your brain to think differently about it. And so we really want our brains to be a friendly, safe place, right? Okay. So here's what I want you to realize, and just back up a step, that you were not born with the brain that currently thinks the way it thinks. You weren't born with that brain. That brain has been taught and developed and conditioned to think a certain way. And we're highly complicated beings, right? The way we think has been influenced by so many factors, thousands and thousands and thousands of learning experiences, trials, data points, information, culture, family, our own thoughts. Right? We're swimming in this land of constant feedback about how we should think, and it's trained us. So let's really look at the science of all of this. And this is where I really start to geek out. So let's geek out together on the science of this all. There is a concept, it's a big word, but it's a concept called neuroplasticity. And neuroplasticity is this researched phenomenon that when you train your brain to think a different way, it creates an actual new neural pathway in your brain. So I like to think about it as, think about those common thoughts that you seem to have all the time that are kind of those nuisance thoughts that just pop up all the time, and you say, gosh, I just wish I could stop thinking that way. It's so annoying and I know it doesn't serve me, but how do I get over that? That thought is coming up because it's become a neural pathway in your brain that has been traveled enough times over a long enough period of time, much like kind of a path would be, would create a groove in a path. If you walked on a certain path over and over, right, the grass would stop growing and a path would be grooved into the ground. That's kind of how our brain works. And when we teach it to go down a different path and create a new groove, the grass starts rising up and growing up on the old path, and the brain doesn't take that old path anymore. So that is exceptionally great news, because you are not stuck in your stinking thinking. You have the ability to grow a new path, a new neural pathway in your brain. And that's what I am here to teach you how to do today. So I want you to think of even the phenomenon of being courageous in your business as a new pathway that when you travel it long enough, over a long enough period of time, it becomes a well-traveled path. And the cool thing about courage is it generalizes to other areas of your life. And so when you become courageous in one area of your life, you will start to become courageous in the other areas of your life that matter to you. Let me give you a quick example. I used to be terrified of going on hikes that had anything that resembled a cliff. Now, my definition of cliff might be different than your definition of cliff. According to my family, I never really was on a cliff, but to me, if there was any sort of drop off, any sort of heights, I would feel it in my body and instantly panic and become very, very terrified and have to huddle down on the ground and hold on to things and like walk on all fours. I mean, it was an intense fear that I had. Fast forward, I learned how to grow my muscle of courage in my brain, right? Grow that and strengthen that through being an entrepreneur, through speaking, through lots and lots of personal development. And I was at Lake Tahoe last summer with my kids, and there is this beautiful beach where you swim out a little bit, and there are all these boulders stacked up on top of one another, and they're gorgeous, and people lay and they sun themselves, and it's just a beautiful place to even go and have lunch on these rocks, and some people jump off of them, etc. So my daughters wanted to go and climb these rocks, and I was like, let's go. So we wade out there and we get out to them, and I am just looking at this boulder of rocks, and I just start climbing it, and I am like, it's like I had spidey sense. I mean, I am leaping up above on one rock, one boulder to the other, and all of a sudden I notice I'm on the top of this giant pile of boulders, pretty high up. And I get to the top and I realize something. I never even stopped to think about being afraid. It never occurred to me that I couldn't climb those boulders. And I was just dumbfounded, reminded of how I used to be in terms of heights, how I used to be in terms of being courageous. And I realized that how I was practicing being courageous in all these other areas of my life had generalized to this other area. And I thought, how did I do that? You know, I didn't even look at the rocks. I didn't even question it. I just jumped up. Where did this Erin appear from? And I realized I developed her. Over time, I created this new me. this new me that looks at a challenge and says, let's get it on. Like, I look at challenges now almost like a moth to a flame, like, bring me there, bring me there. Where's the next challenge? Where's the next challenge? And when you have that kind of mentality in your business, I mean, the sky is the limit. So I want you to think of your brain as if it were similar to being a computer. And any thoughts that you now have as an adult have actually been programmed through all of the learning trials, life experiences, interactions you've ever had in your life. It's like that's been the input into the hard drive, okay? So any negative thoughts that you may have about yourself or your unworthiness or your probability of success, those have all been learned to some extent from somewhere for some reason. And the great news is, if they have been learned, they can be unlearned. So I want you to think about this almost as if we are removing the viruses from your brain. We are removing any of those toxic thoughts, which I know you're getting excited now. Okay, so I used to try to please, prove, and perfect my way to earning my worth on this planet. I'll say that again. I used to try to please others, try to be perfect, and prove through achievements my worth on this planet. And you can imagine that's really dangerous territory, because if you can't get the approval of everyone on the planet, which you can't, your worth is up for grabs, right? That's very dangerous. If you are always achieving, and if you fail at something, that means you're a bad person. I mean, it is a horrible relationship to have. That way of thinking is a terribly restrictive way of thinking. But it worked for me for a while until it didn't work anymore. I mean, I got straight A's, I got all the higher education degrees I could possibly get. And it really came crashing down on me about in my early 30s. I'm 45 now, and it came crashing down in my early 30s when I was creating my family and my career. But perfectionism and I were buddies. Like, we were like BFFs. We were like glued at the hip. But it turned out, of course, to be one of the most toxic relationships I've ever had. So, I really want you to think that if you find yourself saying things like, I've got to get this right this time, or I don't know if it's ever possible. Who am I to think I'll ever make $1 million? If you have those kind of self-doubts, again, remind yourself this process of thinking has been learned, that you weren't born thinking about yourself this way. If you look at and think about little babies lying in the baby nursery and they're just brand new, they don't have thoughts about themselves that they can't make it in life. If you go and ask a 4-year-old what they want to be in their life, they'll tell you the sky's the limit. They'll say, I'm going to be an astronaut. And by the way, I'm also going to be a veterinarian, and I'm going to train the dolphins at SeaWorld. I mean, they just will list it off, right? So at some point, we learn to think differently of ourselves, and we learn to question our worth. We learn to question the likelihood of our success. Okay, so I want us to return to the place of choosing how we think. That is the main pivot, and I call that the power of the pivot. So let's dive in. Let's talk about positive affirmations. So psychologists have actually studied this use of positive affirmations, and they've shown us that there's actually a wrong way to do them. A way that when we do them, it becomes kind of dangerous territory, and it can actually increase shame, guilt, self-destructive thoughts, and self-hatred. Okay, so let me give you an example of how many of us have been taught to do affirmations in an unhelpful way. So if any of you remember the skit, I think it was Dana Carvey on Saturday Night Live, where he would get up in front of a mirror and he would say, I'm beautiful, smart, and gosh darn it, people like me. We were taught to do affirmations that way. We were taught to stand in front of a mirror and say, I am a millionaire, or everyone loves me, or I love everything about my body. And your brain is like, be S, right? The brain is like, that is not true. I know what you think. That's not true at all. So when the brain does that, it creates what's called cognitive dissonance. It creates two opposing thoughts that aren't true. And it's hard to convince your brain of something that is so untrue, right? So we've really messed up how we use our affirmations by telling ourselves and trying to convince ourselves something that our brain knows is radically untrue at that moment. So I'm going to give you the way to do that in the more effective way in a moment here. But the second way we have messed up using affirmations is we have confused affirmations with goals. Now, there is a time and place for both. Of course, we need to have goals. We want to have goals. Goals are super, super, super important, but there is a difference. And the problem comes when people start using affirmations as goals. And they turn their affirmation into goal statements. So let me give you an example of the difference. So a goal is, I would like to enroll 20 clients by the end of 2018. Now, the problem comes when we get in front of a mirror and start our affirmation. It says, I will enroll 20 clients by the end of 2018. What the problem happens is if we don't end up reaching that goal, what's the brain to do? The brain says, neener, 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 I told you so, that proves to me, why'd you dream? Dreaming's, setting goals. Once again, you failed. So the brain's job is to keep you safe. And so the brain takes that data and says, let's learn from that. Let's not be let down in the future. Let's not experience this failure anymore. So the brain's solution to that is, let's not have goals anymore. Let's not dream anymore. Okay? So the brain is like, I told you so. Like, you shouldn't dream. Who did you think you are? So we don't want our affirmations to pummel us like that. So a goal, remind yourself, is very different than an affirmation. Okay? So here are my 5 strategies for creating affirmations that truly work in your business and in your life. And you have a PDF worksheet that goes over all of these 5 points, and you can follow along on there. So the first one is, start with affirmations, say affirmations that are actually believable to you at that stage in your life. And your affirmations will change and they'll grow as your business grows and as your life grows and as your success grows. But again, you want to start with something that's believable. So instead of, I have $5 million in my bank account, we want to go to something that's believable, which is, I'm open to receive money. I will grow my success over time. I'm open to receive my next 5 clients. I'm committed to my goals and know that my efforts will be rewarded. So you see the difference? Because remember, your brain's like, liar, liar, pants on fire, if you're telling it something that's so unbelievably not true. The second strategy and tip to use is stay in the present tense. So instead of saying, someday I will, blah, 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 or I will, or I am going to, say, I am. I am creating the business of my dreams. I am leveling up. I am open to receive my next 10 clients. I am available for abundance. It stays in the present tense. So I am statements are really great for affirmations because it tells your brain what to focus on. Okay. Third, we always want to focus on what we do want instead of what we don't want. So instead of saying, I am open to removing all of my debt, all the brain knows to do with that is focus on the debt. So we want to switch it to what we do want. And so instead we can say, I am open to financial abundance. So instead of, I am removing all toxic people from my life. No, I am open to receive healthy, happy relationships, right? Okay. Number 4, attach a feeling state that's positive to your affirmations. This almost like supercharges them, okay? Generate some like positive energy around your affirmation. So an example of this, I'm so excited to be building my dream life. Or I'm grateful is a really great one to attach. I'm grateful for all that I have, and I work hard and am open to receive all that I desire. That actually is my favorite affirmation of all time, and that's the one I share with myself every day. So I'll say it again. I am grateful for all that I have, and I work hard and am open to receive all that I desire. Another way you could create a positive feeling state, I am capable of. I am enjoying learning how to up-level my success, right? I am capable of changing my mindset and I practice daily. That could be a great positive affirmation. I am capable of learning how to fully and radically love and approve of myself. That's a true statement. I'm learning how to. And I enjoy learning how to approve of myself more every day. You see how different that is? Okay, the last tip for doing positive affirmations that work is the use of intention. And this can really skyrocket your affirmations. So let me give you an example. Instead of saying, I earn 5K every month. If that statement's not true for you right now, I earn 5K every month. No, we're going to use intent. I intend to earn 5K every month and I work hard to achieve it. This is how you change goals into affirmations that actually work. So I cannot wait to hear how these affirmations change things for you and start you on the road of really manifesting all that you desire in your business and in your life. So remember, we want our brains to be very safe, wonderful playgrounds that we play in instead of dangerous neighborhoods, right? So I will see you on the next call and enjoy practicing your positive affirmations.